Elena Vance stepped off the transport shuttle with the slow, deliberate grace of someone who had spent her entire life walking into rooms full of people who underestimated her. The blistering desert sun hit her face, but she didn't flinch. Her boots sank slightly into the sand as the shuttle's engines roared behind her, kicking up dust that swirled around her like a veil. One that suited her just fine. She wanted to disappear, to blend in. To watch how the base truly operated when no one knew she was the one who would soon command it. Her uniform was intentionally plain, no rank, no insignia, no indication of who she really was, the newly appointed Admiral of one of the most critical tactical bases in the region. Only a handful of high-level council members and Admiral Cortez knew she was arriving undercover. She insisted. Leaders don't learn from briefings, she had told them, they learn from people. And so she arrived like any other incoming trainee, her credentials tucked away in a sealed data file that only the highest clearance could unlock. The first thing she noticed was not the heat or the grit, it was the eyes. Watching, measuring, judging, the second thing she noticed was that they weren't even subtle about it. A cluster of senior cadets lounged against the obstacle course fencing as if they owned the place. Sand, colored fatigues, boots loosely laced, rifles slung casually across their shoulders. These were the ones who shaped the culture here, the ones Elena intended to observe, the ones she expected resistance from. The tallest of them, Riker, noticed her immediately. His lips curled into a smirk that never reached his eyes. The type who believed rank was earned through intimidation rather than discipline. "Hey, new girl," he called out, voice dripping with mockery. Didn't think they were accepting tourists now. The others laughed a little too loudly, a little too eagerly, group mentality at its finest. Elena didn't break stride. She had dealt with versions of Riker her entire career. Men, and sometimes women, who equated aggression with authority. She kept her expression neutral, her steps measured. But internally, she catalogued each reaction, the way they leaned in, waiting to see if they could provoke her. The way one cadet elbowed another, smirking. The way their tone changed when they realized she wasn't intimidated. Orientation was held in a large briefing hangar, where holographic displays flickered to life with maps, mission summaries, and base protocols. The instructor droned through details Elena already knew better than anyone in the room. She scanned the cadets instead. Their posture, their focus, their discipline, or lack thereof. Riker's group slouched in their seats, whispering and snickering. When simulation assessments began, Elena moved quickly, efficiently, silently. The others noticed. She navigated the holographic battlefield like someone with years of experience, because she had them. Her fingers danced over the control pad, issuing commands, analyzing drone data, predicting enemy maneuvers before the AI even generated them. Within minutes, she had achieved a score higher than any cadet that week. The simulation screen pulsed blue, indicating a near-perfect tactical victory. Riker's helmet slammed to the floor, echoing through the chamber. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, though it sounded like a growl. Elena turned toward him, her expression unreadable. She didn't respond, didn't gloat, didn't defend herself. Silence, she had learned, was often the most powerful answer, but that silence only fueled their resentment. By the time the sun dipped low on the horizon, she could feel the shift in the air. She was no longer just the new girl. She was a threat, a disruption, someone their egos couldn't tolerate. It didn't take long for whispers to form, for glances to sharpen, for hostility to harden, and she felt it all, absorbed it, studied it, committed it to memory. Still, she held her posture, kept her voice calm when spoken to, helped cadets who genuinely asked questions. She wasn't here to fight them, she was here to observe them, but even as she walked toward the barracks that first night, sand crunching under her boots, Elena knew one thing with absolute certainty: they were going to push her. Hard, and when they did, when they thought they had cornered the new girl, they would discover the truth, not through aggression, not through anger, but through the single most shocking revelation they could ever imagine. She wasn't new, she wasn't junior, she wasn't ordinary, she was the base's admiral, and they had no idea. By the second week, the desert sun wasn't the only thing beating down on Elena. The cadets were relentless. What had begun as petty teasing evolved into a deliberate and systematic campaign to break her. They thought she didn't belong. They thought she was too quiet, too composed, too skilled for someone new. And instead of examining their own shortcomings, they blamed her. The sabotage started small, missing equipment, training schedules accidentally changed, assignments switched. Someone even rerouted her morning briefing notes to the wrong terminal. Elena could see through every one of their tactics, but she maintained her silence. She wasn't here to get even. She was here to learn what kind of leadership this base had cultivated. The truth, it wasn't good. The turning point came during the zero-gravity drill. The chamber was a massive steel cylinder, lined with magnetized grips and safety harnesses. Trainees floated inside with the practiced ease of those who had repeated the exercise 100 times. Elena strapped into her harness, performing a pre-check like she had done thousands of times in her career. Her movements were smooth, professional, maybe too professional. Riker noticed. His jaw tightened. She felt the slightest resistance when she tugged the harness rope, but didn't react. Instead, she filed the information away in her mind. Someone had tampered with it. The question wasn't who the answer was obvious. The question was, how far would they go before they realized their mistake? The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The artificial gravity shut off. Elena felt her body lift, a sensation she usually enjoyed. But this time, the harness jerked violently. Then it spun, hard. Her body twisted uncontrollably, and for a split second, she lost orientation. Gasps echoed through the chamber. She collided with the metal beam, her shoulder slamming into its edge. Pain radiated down her arm, sharp and immediate, but she didn't scream. She didn't panic. She curled her body, adjusted her breathing, and controlled her rotation with subtle, practiced movements until she stabilized. By the time the gravity returned, she landed with both feet firm on the ground, jaw clenched but eyes steady. The instructors rushed forward, concern etched on their faces. "Cadet, are you all right?" Elena nodded, though her shoulder throbbed. She didn't break eye contact with Riker. He was pale beneath the bravado. He knew exactly what he'd done. And now he knew she knew too, but she said nothing. Later that evening, the base's mess hall buzzed with chatter. Soldiers streamed in with trays of food, loud laughter bouncing off the metal walls. Elena sat alone, quietly eating. Her shoulder ached, but she hid it under her sleeve. The scrape of boots announced their approach before she even looked up. Riker and his group cornered her table. "You think you're better than us?" Riker demanded, his voice shadowed with frustration and embarrassment. Elena set down her fork, kept her posture straight. "I think I want to do my job," she said calmly. Her lack of fear infuriated him. Another cadet snorted. "She's too perfect, too quiet. Something's off about her." They were circling her now like wolves who'd lost their confidence but not their arrogance. Then one of them made a mistake. He grabbed her wrist, hard. Before anyone could blink, Elena moved. Her grip tightened around his thumb and elbow, twisting his arm in a precise arc. She pivoted, using his weight against him, and slammed him gently, but firmly, against the table. The sound of the impact silenced the entire hall. Every head turned toward them. Elena released him instantly, letting him stumble back. Her expression remained calm, controlled. "Self-defense," she said simply. One of the instructors stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Soldiers whispered from all corners of the room. Even Riker looked taken aback because the quiet new girl had just demonstrated a level of technique they had never come close to mastering. High above the hall, on the upper deck walkway, Admiral Cortez observed everything. His hands rested behind his back, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. He knew exactly who she was, but he allowed the scene to unfold. He allowed her silence, he allowed her strength. She wasn't just passing their tests. She was understanding their flaws, their weaknesses, their culture. And as she walked out of the mess hall that night, leaving stunned soldiers behind her, she knew one thing with cold certainty. The reckoning was coming, not for her, for them. The air on the training yard crackled with an intensity no one could ignore. The morning sun blazed overhead, casting long shadows across the sand as rumors spread through the base like wildfire. Whispers of an incoming inspection, a surprise inspection, the kind that made even seasoned officers stand straighter, polish their boots, and pray their records held up. The kind that could end careers in a single morning. Cadets rushed across the yard, straightening helmets, tightening belts, rechecking weapons. Elena moved among them, still in her unmarked, plain uniform, unnoticed except for the occasional glare from Riker's group. Her shoulders still ached from the zero-gravity incident, but she kept it tucked beneath a veneer of calm professionalism. Then the roar of engines shattered the morning. Massive transport vehicles rolled into the base, flanked by high-ranking officials in crisp uniforms. Dust clouds billowed, covering the yard in a haze that made everything look dramatic, urgent, alive. The council had arrived. Riker straightened immediately, but not out of respect, out of fear. He nudged the cadet beside him. "Bet they are here because of that incident," he muttered smugly. "New girl's gonna get chewed out." His bravado was thin now, crackling at the edges. "All personnel, form up." The instructor barked. The order echoed across the desert. Elena remained where she was, calm, composed. She watched the council members walk forward, their expressions stern. They scanned the yard, taking in every detail. The cadets shifted nervously. Even seasoned officers stiffened. And then Admiral Cortez stepped down from the platform. Silence fell instantly. He moved with a commander's authority, hands clasped behind his back, his uniform immaculate beneath the sun. His gaze swept across the assembled cadets and landed on Elena. She didn't flinch, didn't move. Even Riker didn't understand why the Admiral's eyes lingered on the trainee with such measured intensity. Cortez turned to the council spokesman, an older officer with silver streaks in his hair and a voice that cut like steel. "Call her forward," he said quietly. The spokesman took a deep breath, stepped toward the front, and projected his voice across the entire base. Cadet stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Elena. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some cadets smirked, others looked confused. Riker smirked widest. "Told you," he whispered. "She's done." Elena stepped forward, slow and deliberate. The council spokesman looked directly at her. "Elena Vance, please present yourself." Gasps exploded across the yard. Riker blinked twice, confused. Did he just say her name? The spokesman continued, voice rising. "Admiral Elena Vance, step forward." Everything stopped. The world seemed to shrink around Elena, the noise of surprise fading until only her heartbeat echoed in her ears. And then she moved. She reached up to her plain gray uniform top and unfastened it with steady fingers. Beneath it, crisp white fabric gleamed, golden insignia, medals, ribbons, the unmistakable rank of Admiral. The cadets froze. Officers stared, speechless. Riker's tan drained from his face in seconds. "No, no way, no way," he whispered, shaking his head. It felt like the ground beneath him had fallen away. Elena stood tall, shoulders squared, her eyes sweeping across the yard. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply existed in the presence of her truth. Intelligent, powerful, unshakably calm. "This past week," she began, voice clear, strong, and unwavering, "has been one of observation." Her words cut through the silence like a blade. "I came here disguised, not to test your skills, but to understand your culture, to see how you treat people you believe are beneath you." Riker couldn't look at her. He stared at the ground, jaw trembling. Elena continued, her voice louder now. "Some of you upheld discipline, some of you demonstrated leadership, and some of you—" Her eyes landed on Riker's group, and they flinched as if struck. "Showed only arrogance, cruelty, and weakness." She paused, letting her words sink into the stunned faces around her. "Strength is not measured by how you tear others down. It is measured by how you lift others up, by teamwork, by respect, by integrity." Her voice resonated across the base, echoing off the metal walls and hanging in the air like a command no one could ignore. She looked at Riker directly. "And from this moment on, every one of you will be held to that standard." Cortez stepped forward beside her, offering a nod of respect. "Admiral Vance will lead this base effective immediately," he announced, "and she will transform it." The cadets stood frozen, humbled, shocked. As the council turned to leave, Elena remained facing the trainees. This was not a moment of triumph. It was a moment of reckoning, a moment that marked the end of the old ways and the beginning of a new era. Under her command, they would learn discipline, not through fear, but through responsibility. And as the sun continued its slow climb over the desert horizon, Elena's presence cast a long shadow over the training yard, a shadow that promised change, justice, and strength. The council's inspection had concluded, and the dust from the heavy transports had settled back onto the desert floor. But the shock that Admiral Elena Vance had unleashed still lingered like an echo in every corner of the base. The moment she revealed her identity was already being whispered about from the barracks to the firing range, from the mess hall to the officers' quarters. By noon, every soldier, every trainee knew one truth: the new girl was the Admiral, and everything was about to change. But the real transformation didn't begin with a speech or a punishment. It began with her very first order as commanding officer. Full assembly, 1,800 hours, training yard. The announcement boomed over the intercoms, crisp and commanding. Soldiers exchanged nervous looks. Some hurried to straighten their uniforms. Others whispered theories about what she would do. Would she punish Riker's group publicly? Would she overhaul the entire training program? Would she fire the instructors for letting their culture rot? Riker spent most of the afternoon pacing in a silent panic. Every time someone looked at him, he could feel the shame burning deeper. His friends who had laughed with him earlier now avoided his gaze. He had underestimated her badly. Worse, he had tried to sabotage her, and now she was his Admiral. When the clock struck 1,800, the training yard was packed. Rows upon rows of soldiers stood in tight formation. The setting sun cast a golden light across the desert, turning the base into a battlefield of shadows and silhouettes. A flag fluttered behind the main platform, its cloth snapping sharply in the wind. Then she appeared. Admiral Elena Vance stepped onto the stage with the kind of presence that silenced 1,000 people. Her white uniform reflected the dying sunlight, her medals gleaming. Every soldier straightened, not because they feared her, but because she commanded respect without raising her voice. "Soldiers," she began, her tone steady but piercing, "this base is better than what I witnessed these past weeks." Her gaze swept across them, her eyes softening slightly, not with pity, but with purpose. Leadership is not a title, it is behavior, dedication, integrity, and accountability. A murmur rippled through the ranks. "You will undergo a restructuring," she continued, "not to punish you, but to rebuild you, to rebuild us." She stepped down from the platform, walking slowly along the front line. The soldiers held their breath as she passed, some terrified, others fascinated. "You think I came here undercover for my own amusement?" she asked quietly, but the question carried across the yard. "I came because the council was concerned, because they sensed cracks in the foundation, and they were right." Her voice shifted, firmer now. "We are not bullies. We are not dictators. We are protectors." She stopped directly in front of Riker. He hesitated before meeting her eyes. His throat tightened as she spoke softly to him, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are talented," she said, "but talent without discipline becomes destruction." Riker swallowed hard. He expected her to strip him of rank, to humiliate him, but she didn't. "You will lead the new Unity squad," she announced. The soldiers stared in shock. Even Riker gaped. "You will train teamwork, not intimidation, respect, not hostility. You will rebuild what you helped break." Riker's voice cracked when he spoke. "Admiral, no excuses," she interrupted gently. "Only action." He nodded stiffly, his entire world shifting beneath his feet. Elena turned away and addressed the entire assembly once more. "Effective immediately, we begin a mentorship program. Each senior cadet will be paired with a trainee. Leadership is earned through guidance, not fear." She motioned toward the hangars. "Tomorrow, we begin joint drills, new protocols, transparent evaluations. I will be present at every session." The soldiers exchanged glances, some nervous, some inspired. This was not the humiliation they had anticipated. This was something harder, growth. As the assembly broke, soldiers returned to their duties with a renewed sense of purpose. The chatter wasn't about punishment. It was about change. About pride, about earning a place in the new era Admiral Vance was building. Riker stayed behind, staring at the platform long after everyone had left. Elena approached him again, her posture softer. "You will be a great leader," she said quietly. If you choose to be. He looked at her, unsure how to respond. Why give me another chance? Elena's eyes were steady, because someone once gave me one. She walked away, leaving him standing in the fading light, humbled and determined. The base had been broken, but under her command it would rise again, and for the first time, Riker realized he wanted to be part of that rise. The transformation of the base did not happen overnight, and Admiral Elena Vance never expected it to. Real change, she knew, was not written in manuals or enforced through fear. It had to be earned, lived, and practiced. And so, on the morning after the assembly, the base awoke before dawn to a sound they hadn't heard in years, the unmistakable hum of discipline returning. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Elena stepped onto the training field. She wore a simple training uniform this time, not the formal white of an admiral. Some soldiers noticed the change and straightened immediately. Others squinted, still unsure how to approach her now that she was both their commander and unexpectedly the most skilled operator among them. She didn't wait long to begin. Unity squads, she shouted, her voice carrying the authority of a seasoned leader and the clarity of a trained instructor. Form up. The cadets scrambled into position, some moving with practiced rhythm, others stumbling under the sudden pressure of her presence. Riker, leading the newly formed Unity squad, stood at the front. He was different, subtly but unmistakably. Gone was the swagger, the loud bravado. In its place stood someone humbled, focused, determined not to fail again. Elena's eyes swept across the group. Today, we rebuild trust. Trust between squads. Trust between ranks. Trust in yourselves. She began with a simple exercise, pair drills. Senior cadets and trainees were matched side by side, forcing them to communicate, cooperate, and depend on one another. Elena supervised the drills with an intensity that made even the instructors nervous. She corrected posture, adjusted stance, and demonstrated movements with ease. Don't force the strike. She coached a trainee, guide it, redirect it. Technique beats strength. For the first time, the trainees saw her not as the mysterious new girl or the hidden admiral, but as a mentor who knew exactly what she was doing. The once fractured base began to show signs of cohesion. But change rarely comes without resistance. During a tactical simulation that afternoon, Elena observed cracks in communication. Cadets shouting over each other, ignoring signals, relying on individual force rather than strategy. The simulation ended in failure. Red lights flashed across the chamber, signaling defeat. Riker wiped sweat from his brow, breathing heavily. That was a disaster. He muttered, frustrated. Elena stepped forward. Why did it fail? One cadet shrugged. We weren't fast enough. Another said, they overpowered us. Elena shook her head. No, you failed because you didn't listen to each other. The room grew silent. She could feel the stubbornness rising again. The instinct to defend themselves, to deny their mistakes. This was the culture she had come to confront. Reset the simulation, she ordered. The cadets exchanged uneasy glances. No one reset simulations twice in one session. It was exhausting, stressful, and demanding. Exactly what she wanted. As the simulation rebooted, Elena walked to the command console and typed a code. The holographic battlefield shifted. Terrain changed, obstacles increased, enemy forces multiplied. Riker's eyes widened. You made it harder. Elena nodded. If you can't communicate under pressure, you'll never communicate in real combat. The simulation began again. This time she moved among them, not participating, but observing, whispering instructions, guiding hand signals, eyes on your partner, cover their flank, don't speak, signal. Slowly, something clicked. The cadets adjusted. Movements synchronized, breath steadied. Riker barked a command, not to dominate, but to coordinate. The younger cadets responded with surprising confidence, mirroring his signals. The simulation ended with a blue pulse victory. Breathless, sweaty, and stunned, the cadets stared at the holographic display. They had never beaten a simulation that difficult. Elena allowed herself a small, approving nod. Better, she said, but not perfect. The group exchanged looks, half proud, half exhausted, but eager. Hunger for improvement replaced resentment. As the cadets filed out, Riker lingered behind, Admiral, he said quietly. May I ask something? Elena turned to him. Of course. He hesitated, searching for words. Why? Why didn't you give up on us, after everything we did? Elena's expression softened, not with pity, but with understanding. Because most people break under pressure, she said, but pressure can also forge strength. I saw potential here. Underneath the arrogance, underneath the fear. You just needed someone to show you who you could become. Riker swallowed hard. The weight of her words landed differently now, like a responsibility. I won't waste the chance, he said. I know, she replied, as she walked away, leaving the simulation chamber echoing with the remnants of victory. Elena felt something she hadn't felt yet since arriving undercover. The heavy steel door clanged, shut behind Admiral Alara Haze, as she stepped into one of the most restricted hangars on the base. Hangar 7, the kind of place where only those with the highest security clearance were allowed to breathe. The moment she entered, every technician, engineer, and pilot snapped to attention. No salutes, no greetings, just silent acknowledgement that someone who could change the course of their mission had arrived. Alara walked forward, her boots clicking on the polished concrete. She carried herself with that unmistakable blend of power and composure. Calm eyes, firm posture, and the slight forward lean of someone who was always assessing, calculating, adapting. She noticed the hum of the prototype engines and the faint vibration under her feet. Something was off. She didn't even need the diagnostics to tell her. Admiral Haze, Chief Engineer Ramos said, wiping sweat from his forehead. We've detected micro-fluctuations in the stabilizer core. We can't find the source. Alara crouched beside the exposed wiring. The smell of hot metal and ozone filled her lungs. She ran her fingers lightly along the insulated conduit. This isn't a mechanical fluctuation, she said quietly. This was tampered with. Ramos froze, you're sure? She looked him in the eyes, positive. A murmur rippled across the hangar. But before fear could settle, she stood up, dusted her hands, and said, I want the core sealed, all tools logged, and every technician accounted for. No one leaves until we have a full audit. Ramos, send encrypted alert code A17 to command, now. Within seconds, the hangar transformed from organized chaos to controlled lockdown. Alara could feel every pair of eyes on her, not out of fear, but out of trust. They knew she'd earned her rank stubbornly, relentlessly, even when the world around her doubted her because of her age, her gender, or the quiet fire in her voice. She wasn't just the youngest admiral in their division. She was the one who'd rebuilt their failing fleet. She turned to leave, but as she reached the door, an alarm blared, piercing and urgent. Red lights flashed on every wall. Ramos ran toward her. Admiral, security breach in the West Wing. Alara's jaw tightened. Which sector? Armory level 3. She didn't hesitate. She sprinted. No hesitation. No second thought. She moved with absolute purpose, so fast the guards struggled to keep pace. By the time she reached the West Wing corridor, the atmosphere had shifted. Thick tension, the metallic tang of danger. A squad of security officers was already waiting. Talk to me, Alara said. The lead security officer swallowed hard. We caught 2 unauthorized personnel trying to access the weapons locker. Their badges were cloned, masks on. We're holding them in containment, but a thunderous boom cut through his words, shaking the corridor. Containment breach, someone yelled. Alara was already moving. She burst into the containment room. Smoke clouded her vision. Steam hissed from broken pipes. The 2 intruders, dressed in tactical black, were scrambling toward a side exit. Without pausing, Alara lunged forward and tackled the first one to the ground. The second swung a metal rod at her, but she grabbed his wrist, twisted it back with precision, and sent him crashing into the reinforced wall. Secure them, she commanded. Security rushed in and cuffed both intruders. Alara stood over them, breathing steadily. One of the masked men stared up at her, eyes cold, calculating. She tore off his mask, and her blood ran cold. He was a trained operative, not a civilian, not a random infiltrator. We have a bigger problem, she said under her breath. Someone outside this base wants our prototype, and they just escalated. Ramos' voice crackled over the intercom. Admiral Haze, we found something in the stabilizer core, a microtransmitter. Someone has been sending data off base. Allura's expression hardened, steel replacing shock. "Lock down the entire facility," she ordered. "No one in or out without my authorization." As alarms blared anew and the base descended into emergency protocol, Allura stood in the center of the chaos, every inch the Admiral she truly was. Her voice, calm but fierce, echoed across the comm system. "Whoever is behind this, they made one mistake. Pause. They underestimated the new girl." The base felt different now, tense, electrified, as though every molecule of air vibrated with unspoken danger. Admiral Allura Hayes walked through the command corridor with her jaw set in a line so sharp it could cut glass. The world outside might see her as the new girl, soft-faced and too young, looking to command respect, but everyone inside the crisis knew better now. She wasn't just in charge. She was the storm they relied on to stay alive. She reached the command center, and the massive doors slid open. Screens lit up the room in violent reds and steady blues, casting fractured lights over panicked faces. Officers stood frozen around the main tactical table until Allura entered. Then the energy shifted. Straight backs, focused eyes. Her presence anchored them. "Status report," she said, her voice even yet deadly, focused. Lieutenant Naomi Reed quickly stepped up. "Ma'am, the microtransmitter discovered in the stabilizer core was active for at least 7 days. During that time, it sent encrypted packets to an unknown satellite relay." Allura's brows knit. "Unknown, as in off-record?" "Yes, Admiral. Not one of ours. Not one of our allies. And definitely not civilian tech." The implications were massive. Something bigger than a rogue operative was happening here. Someone had planned this sabotage with military-level precision. She turned to another officer, and the infiltrators. "They refused to speak, ma'am," he said. "We ran their prints. No match to any known database. Their uniforms, gear, and weapons were stripped of identifiers." Allura inhaled slowly through her nose. Professionals. She walked closer to the large digital map projected before her. It displayed Hangar 7, surrounding structures, and the entire base perimeter. Red blinking markers indicated weak points recently triggered by attempted breaches. Each one was like a needle stabbing her patience. Then she noticed something. "Zoom in on Sector C," she ordered. An officer tapped rapidly. The image expanded, showing the intruder's path. They never moved randomly. They took a route that only someone who knew the base systems would take, avoiding cameras and timed patrol windows. Her pulse kicked into high gear. This wasn't an outside op. They had internal assistance. Naomi murmured, "But who would betray the base at this level? We've screened everyone." "Not thoroughly enough," Allura said, her voice tightening. "Someone is feeding intel. Someone with access to classified schedules." She paused. "Possibly someone with high clearance." A heavy silence descended. The Admiral wasn't intimidated by traitors or shadows in her ranks, but betrayal on her watch that ignited something cold and lethal inside her. "We start a forensic audit on all personnel movements over the last month," she said sharply. "Access logs, entry scans, encrypted comm traffic, everything. Anyone who accessed Hangar 7 more than twice gets flagged." Naomi nodded and started typing. As Allura scanned the map again, Ramos' voice crackled through her comm device. "Admiral, there's more. We analyzed the transmitter's data patterns. It wasn't just sending readings." Allura's heart dropped. "Explain." "It's been relaying the prototype's power algorithms and structural schematics. If someone builds a replica, we lose air dominance." She finished for him, and they gain it. Ramos exhaled. "Yes, Admiral." The stakes had jumped from base security to national security. Allura turned back to the command team. "Prepare a ghost lockdown." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Naomi stepped forward. "Ma'am, a ghost lockdown. That means cutting communications to all external networks, scrambling frequencies, and disabling non-critical systems. It could cripple base operations." Allura met her gaze. "If the enemy has our data, they may attempt extraction or activation. We cannot risk leaving a single open channel." She paused. "This base, and everyone in it, depends on our ability to stay ahead." Naomi nodded. "Yes, Admiral." Allura activated the command console. On screen, A large red warning pulsed. Ghost Protocol Level Omega. Begin, she said. Lights dimmed, systems rebooted, external comms severed. Every soldier on duty shifted to high alert stances. As the room sank into silent intensity, Elara sensed movement behind her. She didn't turn. She simply said, "If you have something to say, say it." A voice answered hesitantly. "Ma'am, some of the junior officers still don't understand why we're following your lead. You're new. You haven't had time to." Elara finally turned. Her gaze cut through the young man like a laser. "I haven't had time to prove myself to people who judge by appearances," she said, "but I've had a lifetime to earn this rank." The young officer swallowed, nodding quickly. Elara turned back to the main console. "This ends now," she declared. "We find the mole, we secure the prototype, and we make sure whoever thought they could take down the new girl learns exactly who they crossed." Her eyes blazed, calm, controlled, deadly. The Admiral had spoken, and nothing on Earth would stop her now. The storm outside had begun to howl. Thick, rolling clouds pressing against the horizon like a massive gray fist. But inside the base, the tension was far sharper. It wasn't the weather that concerned Admiral Elara Haze. It was the silence, too much silence, the kind that didn't come from control, but from something coiled and waiting. She stood in the surveillance control room now, facing rows of screens that flickered with static. The room should have been alive with camera feeds of patrol routes, hangar entries, and secured doors. Instead, half the monitors were dead. A few of them stuttered with fractured visuals, glimpses of boots, shadows, and distorted shapes. Someone had tampered with the surveillance grid, not just once, but systematically. Lieutenant Naomi Reed stood beside her, shaking her head as she typed. "It's coordinated, Admiral. Whoever's behind this knew exactly which cameras to disable to create blind spots." Elara said nothing at first. She simply watched the darkness on the screens, thinking. Darkness wasn't empty. It always hid something, and now she intended to drag whatever was hiding into the light. "Pull the backup feeds," she ordered. "Every camera in the service tunnels, loading docks, and maintenance corridors." Naomi frowned. "Those aren't normally monitored unless someone knows the main grid will be compromised," Elara finished. Naomi swallowed and nodded. As Naomi tapped into the backup network, the room filled with soft beeps and whirs. For several moments, the screens remained blank. Then one flickered to life, grainy but functional. Elara leaned closer. There, an outline, a figure moving in the shadows of Sector D's service tunnel, cloaked in a black uniform, moving efficiently, deliberately, not in panic, not in chaos, a professional. Trained, confident, she didn't blink. Freeze frame. Naomi paused the feed. The image caught the figure mid-stride, but their face was turned away, hidden under a hood. Elara studied the frame, her eyes narrowing. "Zoom in on their left arm. There's something there." Naomi zoomed in until the image pixelated, but even through distortion, Elara saw it. A patch, barely visible, peeking from under the sleeve. A patch she recognized. "That insignia," Naomi whispered, realization dawning. "It's not ours, no," Elara said quietly. "It belongs to the Sovereign Fleet." The room seemed to shrink around them. The Sovereign Fleet. An unaligned, covert military organization that operated beyond any sanctioned defense alliance. Not enemies exactly, but not allies. A ghost faction. A force that specialized in acquiring forbidden tech, by any means necessary. So they're not just after the prototype, Naomi said. They're trying to cripple the base to steal it outright. Elara nodded. "And they're close, too close." She straightened and spoke into her comm device. "Ramos, I need the prototype moved to Vault Omega immediately." Ramos' panicked voice returned. "Admiral, the vault requires triple authentication. We need you here physically." "I'm on my way," Elara said. "Initiate relocation, now." She turned on her heel, but before she could take a step, the entire base shuddered. A boom echoed through the corridors, so powerful it rattled the reinforced walls. Alarms blared instantly, bathing the room in red light. "Admiral," Naomi gasped. That came from the prototype chamber. Elara didn't hesitate. She sprinted, Naomi behind her. The corridor outside was chaos, personnel running, smoke seeping from under sealed doors, the scent of burning insulation filling the air. Ilara's boots hammered against the floor, her heart pounding a staccato rhythm of urgency and fury. They reached the chamber. Thick smoke billowed from the doorway. Ilara covered her mouth and stepped inside. The scene inside made her blood turn to ice. The prototype, once glowing with contained power, was now surrounded by sparks and fractured panels. The stabilizer housing was ripped open, not from an explosion. From intentional force, the intruder stood in the center of the room, hood down, mask off. He turned to face her, and Ilara recognized him, a name she hadn't spoken in years, a man she once served with, a man she once trusted. "Commander Lawthen," she breathed. He smirked. "Still sharp as ever, Admiral." Her jaw clenched. "You betrayed your oath." He shrugged. "Oaths mean nothing in a world where power shifts by the minute. You have what we need, hand it over." She stepped forward, eyes burning. "You'll get nothing from me." Lawthen raised a device. Maul, black, pulsing with energy. Wrong answer. And with that, the room exploded into light.